Hey guys, Charlie Murphy here, playing another session of 126 Max No Limit on Ignition. Thank you for joining us. Lower right hand table will raise first in from the button with Ace-7 suited. Upper left hand table will 3-bet the button 3x open from the small blind with Ace-King suited. I have about a 14 to 15% range here in that small blind versus button spot. We'll go ahead and range bet small in the King-Jack-6 monotone. Upper right-hand table, we can defend the min raise from the fishy player with the 8-7 offsuit, and we'll check range to him. Upper left-hand table, we'll raise first in from the button with pocket nines. Lower right-hand table, rather, we're going to go ahead and check back after he called us on the flop with our Ace-7. Upper right-hand table, we've got a 75% or so flop C-bet. We'll check call with our bottom pair on open-ended straight draw. And we'll fold to that small bet on the river, though that's a candidate for being raised just because it's such a small bet, which usually signifies weakness. Upper left-hand table, we'll go ahead and flat the small blind 3-bet from the button with pocket nines. Got fourth pair open in straight draw. We can go ahead and check call this again against the fish. And against that half pot C-bet, we will peel with the nines. Probably not going to put a ton of money in here, but we can peel that small flop bet, or the half pot flop bet. Lower left-hand table under the gun raises 3x. We're going to go ahead and pop him up with our pocket tens, probably nines plus, ace-10 suited plus, king-jack suited plus, queen-jack suited, ace-5 suited, and then a couple of offsuit broadways like ace-king, ace-queen, king-queen. We will fold to the second barrel without having a spade in our hand there. Interesting sizing. I think I like it from his perspective. Upper right-hand table, we're going to raise the cutoff 3x open from our button with pocket tens. I'll use about a 12% range here against that sizing. Sevens plus, suited broadways, suited wheel aces, ace-jack plus, king-queen, a few suited nines. Lower left-hand table against that 4-bet in that very tight formation, we can go ahead and fold pocket tens. I would probably continue with my jacks and queens, as well as ace-queen suited, and trap with pocket aces. And I would jam over the top with my kings and my ace-king. Upper left-hand table, we will raise first in from middle position with queen-10 suited, part of a standard 21-ish% raise first in range. Lower left-hand table will raise the pocket fives first in from under the gun. You want to have about a 17 to 18% raise first in range from that spot. Lower left-hand table, blind on blind, we'll raise the Jack-10. Start getting a read on how these various players are playing as we played a couple of orbits. So the lower left-hand table all has reg-type players, so we'll shuffle that one out. At least one rec on each of the right-hand tables, so the seating's not ideal. Oh, and he just left us. Lower left-hand table, we'll raise first in from the button with Jack-6 suited. Five-seat limp, so we can go ahead and tag him as a rec. Upper right-hand table, we're in the big blind facing a cutoff 2.5x raise first in. We can go ahead and pop him up with 10-9 suited. I'd 3-bet pretty aggressively here, about 10%. Probably pocket 8s or better. Suited broadways, suited 9x, ace-5 suited, and then offsuit ace-queen, king-queen. Or I'm sorry, ace-queen, ace-king. This new table here looks promising with 3 short stacks and the seats immediately before us. Our left-hand table, suspected recreational player appears to have been limping the cutoff. Even if it was just a post, we're going to go ahead and raise up out of our big blind with ace-10 offsuit. We get called to get a Jack-7-3 two-tone flop. We're going to go ahead and put in a small range bet, and he lays it down. Upper left-hand table will raise middle position, first in with Queen Jack, part of about a 21-ish% raised first in range. Recreational player calls us on the button. The big blind calls as well. We're multi-way out of position to at least one player, so we're going to go ahead and check our range. So we check to the in-position recreational player. Who checks back. Turn is a 4, so we have a Jack 4 deuce two-tone flop with a 4 on the turn. We're going to go ahead and start betting out small now on the turn. We do have Queen Jack for top pair. We get raised small. You know, there's 16 in the pot with 3.5 blinds more to call, and we've got top pairs. So we have to go ahead and call this and evaluate the river. We'll check to him again. River is the 10 that completes the flush. He checks back. He could be doing that. You know, I'm probably folding if he bets the river, especially if he bets the river hard. That check flop raise turn bet river line is pretty underbluffed by fish. It's not a very common line, but it's also not a very weak line. That small turn raise could also have been some kind of middle pair trying to deny equity, get itself towards showdown cheap, take away the chance of facing another bet on the river, in which case it worked because I was going to bet that river in most cases. He had 3 deuce of diamonds for bottom pair. So I would have expected to be more a pocket pair like pocket 7s or 8s, something like that, as opposed to a suited connector that paired the deuce. But we also believe he's a recreational player, so they're going to do things like call 3-2 suited for a raise, so we can't be too surprised. Lower left-hand table, a recreational player limps the button. We check in from our big blind. We check range on the 10-6-5 two-tone, and he checks back. Turn is a Jack offsuit Jack. We're going to go ahead and start jabbing at this pot small as he's shown no interest in it thus far, either pre-flop or on the flop. River is a 6. We have 7 high. We've got no choice but to go ahead and bluff this, try to fold him off better draws, better high card hands that were whiff draws, and he quickly folds. He's probably not folding a 6, a Jack, or a 10 even very often there, maybe not even a 5, but he can just have so many better high card hands here that will fold to that bet that we have no choice but to follow through. Lower left-hand table, that Rick limps the button. We'll complete the small blind with King 9 offsuit. Recreational player isolates up to 4x out of the blinds. And the recreational limper on the button calls. We'll get out of the way with our King 9. It's a pretty promising table with 4 of the 5 other players all appearing to be weak players playing short. And he was limp calling with 4-6. This guy was going with pocket 7s and just blasting off on the ace-4-4 board. So my assessment that their recreational players looks pretty accurate. Recreational player limps under the gun. 2 more Recs limp behind. We're on the button with pocket kings. With all those limpers out there, I'd probably use something like my under the gun range to isolate up. That, of course, includes pocket kings, so we'll pop that up about a 17-18% range. Lower right-hand table will raise a similar under the gun range, 17-18%, but we'll use a slightly larger than normal size because of the dead poster behind there, the force poster in the cutoff. Let's see, we get some limp calls from under the gun and middle position. Cutoff is trying to decide. He comes along too. We get 3 players to the flop on a 6-5 deuce rainbow board. And let's see here. Lower right-hand table, the poster cold called, and then the big blind goes ahead and squeezes behind. I really can't 4-bet and fold because it's going to put too much money in that pot, so I'm just going to go ahead and jam my pocket kings in. Same situation down here. I think these guys have way too many one-pair hands that also will not fold out. believing, a hand like 7-6 or pocket eights is just the absolute nuts here. So I'm just going to go ahead and raise my kings over the top for about a pot-sized bet. We find pocket tens a much better than suspected hand to be out there, but the exact kind of hand that if it is out there, I don't want to let it get scared away of an overcard when one of these fish have it out there. So we go ahead and raise our kings. The first guy folds out, but the second guy calls off with his tens, and we hold up and pick up a pretty decent-sized pot. Upper right-hand table, we raise ace-10 suited from under the gun. Lower right-hand table, we're in the big blind facing a button 2.5x open. We're going to three-bet that pretty aggressively, about 14%, including king-jack suited. Something like eights or better, suited broadways, suited nines, a few suited eights, 5-4 suited or better for suited connectors, a couple of suited wheel aces, and then your offsuit versions of like ace-jack plus king-queen. Something like that's a pretty reasonable range to use here. We'll go ahead and range bet small on the king-queen 4 two-tone flop. Upper right-hand table, 3x open from under the gun, button flats. We're going to go ahead and call as well, closing the action with our pocket fours. We get a small raise from the in-position player. I do not give those a lot of credence based on what I've seen. The players, they do that too much, and they also don't really defend it out when you jam over the top. Given that I've got kind of a marginal top pair, I'm not sure if I want to go ahead and ship this in on him, as he's just going to get away from his bluffs too easily. If I had draws, I would ship them in. If I had some stronger lock-type hands that didn't block his call-downs, like pocket queens, I would ship in here as well. King-jack, I'm just going to flat, not thinking I'm beat, but not want to give him a chance to get off the hook with his bluffs too easily. Upper left-hand table, our cutoff raise first in with king-jack, got 3-bet in position to 3x by the button. We're just going to go ahead and fold our king-jack. We can fold the fours on the upper right-hand table. Lower right-hand table, the turn is a 10. Now it gives us top pair and the open in a straight draw. I think at this point I want to get him pot stuck if he's got something too good to fold out. He really shouldn't have pocket kings. I guess he could have queens, even though that should be re-raised pre-flop at a decent frequency. He could have some kind of weird combo draws. I think I'm just going to be better off to go ahead and get this all in at this point rather than call down when he bets small. So I'm going to go ahead and ship this in. He didn't snap call me, so that's a good sign. Doesn't mean he doesn't have ace, jack, jack nine, pocket queens, pocket tens, king queen. And he actually folds even after putting half his stack in there. So that lends some credence to my idea that these flop raises in position in 3-bet pots are not necessarily strong. He followed it up with a small turn bet, which is designed to put my marginal hands in a bad spot as well. So I think he's probably a decent thinking player. He's just got too aggressive in the way that I'm familiar with and don't fall for, and it burned him that time. But I do not think he's a weak player necessarily based on what I saw. On the contrary, I think he's probably aggressive in making moves. Lower left-hand table, we checked the range on the flop, and it checked through on the queen 8-4 rainbow. We min-bet small out of position on the 7 turn that puts a backdoor flush draw out there. River is the ace of spades, not the best river in that now, our queen is not top pair any longer. If he's got something like 8-9, he's less likely to believe it's good. I still think we're better off just putting kind of a mergey bet in here to try to get some value. When he goes and min-raises me, however, instantly min-raises, I think that's more likely to be some kind of ace-x hand than anything else. That said, I'm getting better than 4-1. I have to be good so infrequently here for this to be a break-even call that I'm just not going to let him move me off a pot for that min-raise on the river. I expect a lot of ace-x in his range, yeah, and he had ace-7 for a 2-pair hand, which is a reasonable hand to raise the river, but I'm just not going to fold something decent for that price on the river, no way, no how, especially against a guy who's known to be a recreational player and could be just clicking buttons randomly. Upper right-hand table, we're going to raise first in from the cutoff with king 6 suited. Upper left-hand table, the middle position raises the cutoff 3-bets. In our small blind, we have pocket tens. This is really a cold 4-bet or fold situation. I don't really want to have that many bluffs in my range. I'm going to actually go ahead and fold the pocket tens, even though it's on the tight side. I don't want to 4-bet that and call off against this guy in that formation. I really only want to be doing that with probably queens plus jacks is even a little bit marginal, I think, to do that in that spot. And I don't want to have too many bluffs because of how bloated that pot is already getting and how large my size has to be reasonable. So I'm going to go a little even less than a 50-50 ratio of value to bluffs, probably something like 60-40 value to bluffs. I think my range in that spot's going to be queens plus ace-king to stack off with, and then maybe mix in jacks and then suited versions of ace-queen, ace-jack, king-queen, king-jack, as those hands play well if they're called and have good removal to the hands that will either re-raise all in or call the 4-bet. Upper right-hand table, the cutoff raises first in for 3x, assuming the button folds. We're in the small blind with the opportunity to 3-bet with pocket sevens. Against a standard reg with a 3x open in the cutoff, I would repop about 10% here from the small blind. Pocket eights are better, not pocket sevens. That's where I would draw that line, somewhat arbitrarily, but to keep the frequencies roughly in whack is how I would do that. Given that this guy, if anything, has been on the tight side, I'm not going to deviate wider. If anything, I would be deviating tighter, and as a default, this is already a fold, so I think I should just go ahead and lay that one down. It's only his second raise first in 15 attempts. He's not playing all that loose, at least not thus far. This guy's playing on a short stack. I'm going to go ahead and tag him as a rec. I think that's very fair to do. Couple of recs on the lower left-hand table still, plus that new guy sitting down 60 blinds deep most likely fits the description as well. Recs to my left on the lower right-hand table. Upper left-hand table, a rec to my left. I'm going to raise first in from the button with Jack-4 suited. Kind of a cuspy open towards the bottom of my range, but still a reasonable hand to raise first in with, especially if the blinds will play poorly and you start playing extra hands. Upper left-hand table doesn't seem too fishy, with the exception of a guy just sitting playing 30 blinds deep. But the games seem pretty good right now, so I'm going to look around for tables with either more or better fish than just one new suspected guy. The other tables can stick around for now. Looking pretty promising. Lower left-hand table, we'll raise first in with the Queen 10 on the button. One rec left, the other rec busted. That table may be falling apart faster than we anticipated. Lower right-hand table, we'll raise blind on blind with A6. Lower left-hand table, we're going to range bet against the big blind on the King Queen 5 rainbow flop. We get a couple of recreational players limp, and then player who might be a reg, but he might be a weak reg, or he might be a fish, we just don't know yet. He also limps behind. With all these limpers out there, we're going to go ahead and isolate this pot. Something like 8s plus, suited broadways, suited 9s, Ace-10 offsuit or better, King-Jack offsuit or better, something like that. Ace-Jack suited, very clearly a hand that should be isolated here with these limpers out there. I'm going to use a large 150% of pot sizing when I'm isolating limpers out of the blinds to either discourage the calls or force them to put a lot of money in with their weak hands to negate the advantage of position that they'll have on me if they come along and play post-flop. He goes ahead and pops it up to 31. I do not believe him. I'm trying to decide if I want to go ahead and jam this in over the top. He could have various pairs. I do not believe him, but I'm gonna be a bit disciplined and lay this down. You know, I mean, like Ace King obviously is getting all in the middle. Queens plus, Jacks plus. I'm gonna go with. I think Ace Queen suited, maybe even Ace Queen off. I'm gonna go with, and probably pocket 10s, pocket 9s. I might even as well, because I just am very suspicious that that guy really has a strong hand played that way. But you don't know for sure. Sometimes those guys are being cute and they're limping kings or aces and hoping to re-raise. So I can't say for sure. I don't really have much of anything in the way of meaningful data about that. I just think these guys play too many hands and sometimes do wacky things. Be very curious to check that one in a day or two, what he actually had there. I think folding Ace-Jack is probably the mature move, even though I'm very, very skeptical that that guy really has a real hand there. New table looks promising with some short stacks all around on either side of me. Lower right-hand table, we're going to go ahead and raise blind on blind with our pocket 10s. Upper right-hand table, we get a button limper. We're in the small blind with pocket 7s. This is kind of on the cusp. I tend to limp these in after limpers as opposed to isolating, but raising can't be too bad here either. I usually draw the line at 8s, not 7s, but I think it's pretty close. I'm going to opt to just complete the small blind and play post-flop in a smaller pot. Lower right-hand table, blind on blind. We checked range on the 7-7-5 two-tone. He checks back. We peel a queen on the turn, so we're going to go ahead and start betting at that pot small after he doesn't show any desire on the flop. Upper right-hand table will check range on that Ace-4-3 to the two in-position players in that limp pot. And we will fold against his pot-size stab in position. Now, there's not a whole lot I can really get called down with that's worse for value here. Is the King X, the Queen X, and the 7X all beat me. He could probably bluff or stab with some stupid stuff, though. I'm not going to check and decide as opposed to try to put him thin mergy value betting in this spot. I guess he might also call me with some 5X if I bet. I just don't know that that's going to outweigh all the times I bet into a King or a Queen or a 7. Now, he bets overbet. Interesting. The overbet tends to be slightly overbluffed. The check call bet line, however, not so much. Let's see. Broadway River overcard and Broadway Turn overcard both tend to be a bit overbluffed, as does the paired flops are pretty neutral, but non-flush closing rivers are overbluffed. I think we can go ahead and call this against a 7. That's okay. I think you can have all kinds of weird, janky draws and unpaired high card floats. Upper right-hand table, we raise ace-10 from the cutoff. Upper left-hand table, we raised aces under the gun. Recreational player called us from the cutoff in that table. We're going to go ahead and check range to him on the queen h7 rainbow flop. He bets 4. So if I want to check raise or check call, that larger sizing doesn't really get folded. They don't fold the check raises after that larger sizing nearly as often as they do against the smaller size. So I'm going to go ahead and put in a reasonable size check raise, try to string him along with the queen X or some kind of draw, start getting some money in here now. Upper right-hand table, queen is a lousy turn, so I'm going to go ahead and slow down with my aces. Over here in the upper right-hand table, you just get our range bet gets min raised. I'm going to go ahead and float that. I'm going to fold to that follow-up barrel, having not picked up any equity, though. Lower right-hand table, all these limpers I'll isolate with the ace-jack. He goes ahead and bets pot on the queen. I'm going to not give this guy credit, as I know how loosey spazzy he tends to be. He has some queens, but not enough to really punish us here. I'm not going to fold the aces for what a pot bet left behind. We're going to get this in. Run into queen 10, run into quad queens, so be it. Unfortunate turn, but the flop strategy was sound to try to hang him with a weak queen that he shouldn't be in there with. Just hit the best turn for him that pulled him ahead, but I'm okay with that. Lower left-hand table, we got called by 2 players, so we're not going to range bet. We'll go ahead and check range instead on this 8-4-3 two-tone flop. Oh, and he's going to hit and run us too, unfortunately. But that's the way it goes sometimes. Sometimes you stack the fish, sometimes the fish stack you. Everyone checks the flop. We get an offsuit king on the turn. I'm going to go ahead and start stabbing at that small. In position player calls us, but the rec folds out. River is the 5. We're going to go ahead and continue barreling with our ace high that cannot win its showdown. Not going to fold out the king, but should fold out most everything else. He has king 7, and we lose another one. We're going to raise that rec player blind on blind with the ace-king suited. Upper right-hand table, we've got a limper and a completer, so we're going to go ahead and isolate from the blinds with pocket 10s. We'll check range blind on blind on the ace-5-4 two-tone. Get a queen of diamonds after he checks back on the lower left-hand table, so now we'll start stabbing. Upper right-hand table, we'll check range with multiple players in that pot, one of them in position on us. Checks through, we get an offsuit 3. I'm going to go ahead and start betting small now, multi-way. Lower right-hand table, we got ace-king, so we got top 2 on that monotone flop. We're going to go ahead and bet our top 2, try to get value from any kind of ace-x. Lower right, upper right-hand table, we just got the best card for us, the 10. I'm going to go ahead and put in that small bet multi-way. Let them call with 4s or random pairs. Let them raise the 3 on me. Let them decide I'm bluffing and bluff raise me, go for that small bet. Go ahead and use that small bet multi-way. The in-position player calls us, and we show that one down good. In the ace-king hand, I didn't see it live, but he folded out, so we didn't get our value bet in the river on that one, but I think we approached it reasonably. Lower left-hand table, we get called by the big blind after raising the button first in. We'll range bet small on the ace-10-9 monotone flop. We do have the queen of hearts for the second nut flush draw here. And we get raised. I give a lot of credence to these raises that aren't particularly small, especially on these monotone boards. They really shouldn't be raised all that much in the first place. We got the second nut draw, and we do have a pair. I'm going to go ahead and float this. It's too strong to fold, just a one-check raise. Offsuit king gives us a gut shot to go with our second nut flush draw and fourth pair. Probably not the kind of hand we want to start barreling with or putting too much more money in, but we do have some equity if we get a chance to see a free river. We don't. Against that, I think I'll just go ahead and fold. If I had the king, or if I had some more equity to go with, a stronger made hand, I would continue. But the 9 is not that strong, and I really want a more nutty type draw than even the queen. I guess the queen's not bad. It's the second nut draw, but it's a 4 flush. It'll be very obvious if it peels. Lower right-hand table, middle or under the gun raises first in. We'll 3-bet from middle position with a 8.5% range or so. 9s plus, ace 10, king 10, queen jack suited or better, ace 5, ace 4 suited, and offsuit versions of ace king, ace queen, king queen. Something like that. Get us to about 8.5%, so reasonable range to 3-bet and under the gun opener with. Upper left-hand table, we'll raise first in from the cutoff with 10-8 suited. Recreational player cold calls the 3-bet in position, and the under the gun player folds. Given that we only have one opponent, I'm the 3-better. I am going to go out there and put a small range bet in with my 3-bet range there with the 9-6-3 two-tone board. Upper right-hand table, I'll raise jacks first in from middle position. We're going to go ahead and 4-bet call off the jacks. We're going to call the 3-bet in the against the small blind. Oh shit! I fucked up. I didn't see that cold 4-bet. Go ahead and put the second barrel in with that king peeling on the turn over there, with us having the gut shot. Just going to go ahead and fold, not compound my mistake here with that 8-10 hand. Lower right. Oh, and I'm making mistakes galore right here. It's a damn shame. I'm not going to triple barrel the in position player, especially a fish. That's one spot where the triple is a much more marginal spot. So I'm just going to go ahead and surrender this one. And had I realized that we were deep over here, I would have. And somehow I checked down queen high. I do not know what is going on right now. Misread 2 spots. Misread the cold 4-bet and called when I shouldn't have, and then misread that we were 200 blinds deep and put in a 4-bet with jacks that I should not have done. End up against 5-8 suited that was calling me with a gut shot and a flush draw the entire time, and then checked down its 8 high against my queen high. Not my finest hour there on a couple of those hands for not keeping track of what was going on well enough. Doesn't happen too often, but it happens, and you saw it. There's proof. Lower right-hand table will check range to that fish on the king 7-4 two-tone flop. And we'll go ahead and check call with our top pair second kicker and check again on the 6 that completes the rainbow. Fish checks back. We get a 6, so we have trips now. Trips second kicker. We're going to go ahead and just try to get some value in with this. Hope he heroes down with a weaker pair or weaker trips. Some pretty bad mistakes by me there in terms of magnitude, but cold flatting that 4-bet with 10-8 suited, and putting in the 4-bet with jacks 200 blinds deep and having to fold to that small 5-bet. Try not to do too much of that. Upper right-hand table, we isolated the cutoff poster. The small blind comes along, as does the poster. He donks into us. We have 8-7 diamonds on the 9-5-3 rainbow flop. We've got a gut shot to the nuts, backdoor flush draws. He's not betting all that large. I think it's going to be. Oh, the other thing is that those the fishy donk bets. I mean, I think I'm really just going to be flatting my entire continue range here for the most part, so I'm just going to go ahead and flat that one too. Some merit to raising that. I'm not sure how weak he's donking multi-way. But that small turn size, once again, doesn't really scream strength to me. So I'm going to keep coming along here for these small bets and look to maybe take this pot away from him on the river. He goes ahead and checks. I've got 8 high. I don't know if there's any other move, but just going ahead and turning my hand into a bluff. And given that we thought he was pretty weak from the flop, and especially the turn sizing, we end up taking it away from him pretty easily, and I'm not that surprised that that one worked. Lower right-hand table, we raise first in from the button with ace-10 offsuit. Upper left-hand table, middle position, raises first in, cutoff 3 bets. Cutoff, these seem like standard reg types, so I'm not going to think this. I'm going to play it like a standard reg type situation, put in a cold 4 bet and call off with queens plus ace king. About a 50-50 ratio of value bets to bluff, so probably have like my pocket jacks, ace queen, ace jack, king queen, king jack suited versions, and maybe even ace queen offsuit in there as cold 4 bet bluffs. Lower left-hand table, we have what appears to be a forced poster in the middle position. We'll isolate him from the cutoff with our king jack offsuit, something like our 21% cutoff raise first in range. Upper right-hand table, it limps in pre-flop and then checks around on the flop, so I'll start stabbing at that turn. They both came along, so I'm probably not going to bluff at this river. Just go ahead and give that one up with 2 guys out there that could have a piece of it. Do a decent removal and let I block 7-8, I guess 7-3 to the extent that that's relevant, as well as I have a club in my hand. So not the worst removal if I want to start bluffing there, but multi-way it's a bit sketchier, especially against a couple of fish. I'm sorry, recreational players. Same table, upper right-hand side. Rec limps in from the cutoff. I complete the small blind with 8-10. Flop checks, and then it checks all the way through. I'm going to go ahead and put in a small bet here. And I'm going to continue betting this 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, continue betting that. I'm not really sure I fold out too much better, but I like it better than check calling. Upper left-hand table, recreational player limps. The small blind completes. We're going to go ahead and isolate up out of the blinds with jack 9 suited. Towards the bottom of my ISO range, but a reasonable hand I do this with at the same point. We get heads up against the rec. We get a jack, deuce, deuce, rainbow flop. I'm going to go ahead and put in a small range bet on that flop. Feeling pretty good about the fact that I have top pair here. Lower right-hand table, a player who's been very tight so far raises from what's the cutoff. I'm going to treat that like a bit tighter spot like middle position and have a bit tighter 3-bet range. Against that 3x open as well also tells me he's probably been in the tights. And I'm probably only going to be 3-betting about 8% here. Something like pocket 8s or better, ace-queen plus, suited versions of ace-10, king-10, queen-jack plus, and a couple of suited wheel aces like ace-5 and ace-4. I think that's a reasonable range to repop with here. And even that might even be a bit loose for how passive and nitty this guy has been thus far pre-flop. Lower right-hand table, we'll raise first in with ace-queen. Games are very good at the moment. Lower right-hand table, we'll raise first in from middle position with king-queen suited, part of our 21-ish% middle position raised first in range. Upper left-hand table, we raise the cutoff first in with pocket kings. Part of our 27, 28-ish% raised first in cutoff range. Upper right-hand table cutoff, same deal, this time with ace-10 suited. Lower right-hand table, everyone folds except the big blind, and we get an ace-jack-7 rainbow flop. He checks to us, so we'll go ahead and put in our small range bet. Middle position raised first in, upper left-hand table with ace-9 suited. Lower right-hand table. I don't really know that he's going to fold any Jack-X or too much Ace-X. I'm going to be using overbet or check lines here. I think I'd be overbetting the aces full and trip jacks and sevens full. Draws, I think I want more equity than just this king-queen gut shot here. I either want some kind of combo draw, or I'd rather have the lower gut shots. I would rather have something like 8-9, 9-10, queen-10. I think I'll check back to king-queen. River, we jabbed small with a monotone flop that checked around on the Jack-7, 4, 7. We had the 4 plus the king of diamonds drawing to it. We hit that 8 of diamonds. We have the 4 flush. We're going to go ahead and bet pot for value. He goes ahead and bets 3. He bets a third of the pot. That could be a cheap bluff. He could be trying to show down his ace high. I'm going to go ahead and call with my king-queen high. There's some merit to trying to turn this into a bluff raise as well. I just haven't done enough research on how that spot works yet. When we end up snapping him off, his king-10 against our king-queen. That's also additional reasoning why, if I'm trying to split some of my gut shots on that turn, why king-queen might be better to check back as opposed to bluffing, because the lower ones don't have any showdown value, whereas king-queen technically has a little bit of showdown value against lower gut shots. Doesn't make a huge difference in EV, but you want to squeeze out every bit of EV that you can. He's bust, but in case he reloads, we should tag him as he's been limping. Upper right-hand table, under the gun recreational player limps will isolate from middle position with something along the lines of our under the gun raise first in range, a 17 to 18% range. Ace-king, of course, is going to be near the top of that. Called by the big blind and the limper. Got a queen 6-4 two-tone flop. Both those players, not they both lead. The big blind donks out for about a third of pot, and the under the gun player calls. I'm going to float this with 2 overcards and the backdoor nut flush draw, just because the price is so good, and they may well be weak still. Having not picked up any sort of equity on that offsuit ace that puts a double flush draw out there, and with him betting a bit larger, a little over half pot, now I'm going to go ahead and fold. But I think the flop float's very reasonable, especially against 2 very clear weak recreational players. He hasn't limped, but he's playing short. I think that's a good enough sign. Also 60-40 over 10 hands. His cold calls were not in the big blind either, which further indicates recreational. Upper left-hand table will raise first in from middle position with the 10-7 suited. Towards the bottom of the range, I would raise 10-7, fold 10-6. Raise the various suited 7s like ace-7 through 8-7, 7-6. Interesting spot. Recreational player raises to 5x. He hasn't raised any hands yet. I think it's going to be okay to pop this up and try to get it in against him. And squeeze out all that dead money. So I don't necessarily believe he's got a real strong range just because he does that. It's possible, but with all that dead money out there from his 5x and the other fish player putting the 5x out there, I think it's okay to go ahead and try to squeeze that money out. I get called in both spots, however. I'm not going to bluff the dry side pot. Lower right-hand table, I'm going to raise 5s from the cutoff. He jams into me for 78. I'll just fold the 8s. Okay, ace-king and ace-jack. So it was reasonable to raise this guy up. It wasn't a super nutted range. I mean, ace-jack's a pretty good hand, of course, but I think my pre-flop play was all right and didn't run myself into real trouble. He should have just reshipped at some point, and he didn't. Lower right-hand table, the cutoff, we raise first in as the cutoff. We get 3 bets small, about 3.5x by a passive fishy player out of position. I'll treat this like a tighter formation. Well, even if I don't treat it like a tighter formation, I think I can still justify calling this particular hand just because the odds are so good for that small sizing. We like to throw more pairs into the call range versus that small sizing. So I'm going to go ahead and defend that. Upper right-hand table, got a recreational player limps middle position. We'll isolate from the button with Queen 10 offsuit using something like a cutoff raise first in range to ISO mid to upper 20%. Get called by the big blind and the limper. We'll go ahead and check back on 8-6-3 rainbow. Lower right-hand table, we get bet into half pot on that Jack 4-3. We've got a better pair than everything except the Jack. We do have some backdoor straight draws. I am going to peel this at least once. On the turn, the upper right-hand table, it checks to me again. I'm going to start stabbing it at small now, using small bets because of the multi-way nature of that pot. River is the 3 of hearts. I'm going to go ahead and continue bluffing if he checks to me there. He bets into me. I'm going to go ahead and give him credit. Lower right-hand table, the turn was the ace of hearts. I checked back. The river was the 5, giving us a set and also putting a 4 straight out there. I think I want to go ahead and use typical pot size bet on this 4 straight and 4 flush runouts. I'm going to do this for value, trying to get called down by some kind of ace-X that thinks I'm turning something into a bluff. Just not that worried about flushes or 2X in his range as played. Min raise on the button. Recreational player calls on the small blind. This is kind of on the cusp, even against that small sizing. Because these players are both so weak, I think we can go ahead and defend. Just look to try to hit some kind of straight or 2 pair. Nobody bets had it on the flop. It checks to me again on the turn, so I'm going to go ahead and start stabbing at it. In position player calls. River is a 6, doesn't really change too much. I'm going to continue bluffing with my 4 high and not show that down. Actually, I'm really not having a great session. I didn't even realize that I'm value betting the low end of my straight right there. It's against 7-6 for 2 pairs, so it was a very reasonable call down. Quite several silly things caught on camera this session. I hope you're all having a good time. This should be the outtake reel. But we'll still post it. You'll still get to watch. Not going to hide it from you. Upper right-hand table, recreational player limps middle position. We'll go ahead and we'll complete the small blind with Queen Jack. When the big blind goes ahead and puts in a pretty healthy size isolation raise, though, we'll just fold and get out of the way on that one. He had Queen Jack also, so he was barreling away with the same hand with his gut shots, and pocket 4s was heroing down. Called a couple of streets with that. Upper right-hand table, a couple Rex limp, another short stack isolates them up small to 3X. We're on the big blind. I'm going to go ahead and treat this like a all-in, like I'm going to raise to either get it all in or to fold. I'm not going to give him a chance to 4-bet small back. Let me see here. Go ahead and do this with, we'll do this with Jacks plus to call off against this guy. Probably about a 50-50 ratio. That sounds about right. Ace-King, I'm getting it all in if he plays back at me. Should probably even have pocket tens in my stack off range there as well. Pocket tens, ace king. And probably not quite a 50-50 ratio of bluffs, probably more like 60-40. I don't want to be folding too much with all that money in there for just a 40-ish blind jam. Probably raise up something like pocket tens and ace king, as well as ace queen, and then suited versions of ace 10, ace jack, king queen, king jack. If he jams over the top, I'm going to call with tens and ace king. The ace queens become decisions at that point. I probably end up calling off with those two, just because we're short and he could be spazzy. Those would normally not be hands I would raise up to get all in any kind of, three bet or cold 4-bet type situation against regs and full stacks. But against fishy players on half stacks, a lot of the usual rules go out the window just because they can be, he can have ace 10 and think he's got no choice but to jam it all in that spot kind of thing. He can have pocket eights and feel like he's got to get it all in. And if he's doing stuff like that, folding hands like ace queen is a disaster. Upper right-hand table, we'll raise first in with pocket queens under the gun. Get 3-bet in position by an aggressive reg-type player. 200 blinds deep. The fish comes along, too, and cold calls the 3-bet. Given that we're 200 blinds deep and this formation is so tight, I do not want to 4-bet queens. I'm not going to make the same silly mistake I made with jacks, 20 or 30 minutes ago. I'm just going to go ahead and flat that 3-bet and evaluate. The presence of that silly wreck in there may slow this guy down a decent bit. I think it's going to be okay to go ahead and call. I would just go ahead and call if I flop the set here as well. I'm going to go ahead and call, and I think he's going to probably have to play pretty transparent and face up. If he raises over the top, he can go ahead and force me out, and he does that. Oh, what I wouldn't give to be sitting on 8s or 7s with the trap here right now. We'll go ahead and get that out of there. We run into pocket kings, and we get away appropriately. We do lose a decent chunk of our money because of the way the fish donked into us, but we can't be folding queens in that spot. Unfortunate spot being pinned behind the aggressive deep player like that. Not sure why he's cold calling a raise in the 3-bet, then donk jamming bottom pair with 6-3 offsuit. But as I've said, these guys, once you know they're recreational players, you can be comfortable that they're going to do all kinds of silly, absurd things. Damn shame I wasn't sitting on one of my sets in that spot, or he didn't have ace king and just had to fold out of the whole situation. It's unfortunate to put in that many blinds and still have to fold with a hand as strong as queens, but it's pretty clearly the move. Upper right-hand table, recreational player limps the button. We'll limp in the small blind. Big blind is not having it, though. He isolates up and folds us both out. I wouldn't like playing in position with this guy where we're only a little bit deeper now, as I gave away a bunch of my blinds a couple hands ago. But against an aggressive player in general, I don't like having him in position to me. But given I've got these other 3 fish right out here, and I've got the Jesus suit in all 3 of them, I've got no choice but to stay and just hope I can deal with the aggressive player behind me. Perhaps he gets bored and leaves. Wouldn't that be nice? But the rest of this table just looks entirely too enticing for anybody to want to give up a seat. Upper left-hand table will raise the cutoff first in with a 28-ish% raise first in range, including ace-queen offsuit. Upper right-hand table will raise first in from middle position with a 21-ish% range, including king 7 suited. Probably raise suited kings down to about king 7, king 6. Probably start folding king 5 and below. Something like that. Got a 10 deuce deuce two-tone flop. We'll go ahead and range bet small against the big blind who checked to us, and he instantly folds. Lower left-hand table, a recreational player on the cutoff. He raises 4x. He's only on a 20 blind stack. In some situations, I might just want to go with the ace-10. This guy has only raised twice to the 27 opportunities so far. He's very loose passive, not very aggressive with the raises, very nitty with the raises. I'm not going to go ahead and raise this to get this in. I'm just going to go ahead and get out the way. I think ace-queen are better just because he's short I still have to go with. I'd go with Pocket tens are better, and ace queen I think is what I'd raise against this guy, and nothing else because I really can't have a raise folding range. I can only raise hands I want to get all in against that guy for that size. Ooh, excuse me. Lower right-hand table, we raise first in under the gun with, middle position with pocket threes. We get check 2 on the jack 8-4 two-tone flop. We go ahead and put in a small range bet. He check calls. We get the king of hearts on the turn. If I got a heart in my hand, I might start barreling this again. Like if I had 3-3 with a 3 of hearts, just because on the 4th heart I can check back and beat some one-pair non-heart combos. Without the heart, I think I just want to check this one back and evaluate the river. I will be bluffing that 4-heart run-out, though, however, with an underpair to the board, effectively no showdown value whatsoever. We'll go ahead and use our pot size bet on the 4-flush run-out. Upper left-hand table, we raise under the gun. We get called by a recreational player in the big blind, and we range bet small after he checks the flop on a king-king-9 monotone board. Turn is the queen of hearts, putting a backdoor flush draw out there. I would be betting, for value. I would trap quad kings. I think I'd bet all the other full houses, though, the underfools and king-queen, king-9. I could be betting my various heart draw. I'd be betting my straights also for value and most of my trip kings as well. I'd be checking back a lot of the one-pair type hands. I'd be betting heart draws and gut shots, hands like ace-jack, ace-10. We'll check back ace-3 and evaluate the river. Picked up a smidge of showdown value over ace-high. I think I'll take my showdown here. I'm not going to try to get him to fold. Certainly not queen or king, not even a 9. And we have some showdown value over ace-7. We check it down. Let's see. Lower right-hand table, our cutoff player limps. We check in our big blind. We check to him on ace-3 deuce. He goes ahead and bets 2. We're going to go ahead and check raise him with our gut shot and try to pull him off that pot. He's been reasonably aggressive. He can probably have all kinds of hands in his range. He could be betting nonsense like 7-8, 8-10, stuff with no real equity. We do have a gut shot to back us up in case he calls us. Check raise bluff didn't work, but I think it's a reasonable logic. And who knows, we still might find a way to hit our 4 here. However, when he starts barreling the turn again after I check, I'll just go ahead and let that go. Let the flop check raise stand on its own merit. I guess if I had a hand where I'd picked up some hard equity too, I might keep barreling. But, I'm not going to just barrel that naked gut shot in that spot against a recreational player that's going to get way too sticky with all kinds of aces. Lower right-hand table, we'll raise first in with the ace-10. You get 3-bet. Interesting because we're deep here again. Now this small blind spot, normally I would probably be 4-betting queens plus ace-king. I think I may get a bit tighter than that here, just because we're deep. I don't want to raise up ace-king offsuit or queens. I am going to keep my ace-10 offsuit though in the 4-bet bluff range here. Because I can call my ace-queen, ace-jack, king-queen. So use ace-10 as the 4-bet bluff to go with aces, kings, ace-king suited to stack off. And we get that one through. All right. Upper left-hand table, we get a 4x open for middle position from a fishy player that's been on the loose and aggressive side. I'm going to go ahead and raise up the jacks, and I'm going to get these in if he jams over the top. About a 50-50 ratio of hands that will fold and hands that will call against the jam. Got jacks plus ace-king, and then pocket tens, ace-queen, and then suited versions of ace-queen, ace-jack, ace-10, king-queen, king-jack. Upper right-hand table, we raised larger with that poster with all that dead money out there. We got called in position by 2 players anyway, despite the larger raise size. We'll go ahead and check range to both players on the ace-8-5 two-tone flop, and we'll just check fold our 7s. Multi-way. No reason to start getting involved in that particular pot. Our right-hand table, recreational player limps the button. Another presumed recreational player playing on that short stack completes the small blind. We're going to go ahead and isolation raise up out of the blinds with our pocket tens. Probably have 8s or better, suited broadways, suited 9x, ace-10 off better, king-jack off or better. We get a jack-5-4 two-tone, or rainbow flop rather. We'll go ahead and range bet small against the recreational player who limped and then called the button. He calls. Turn is a jack. Pretty good card for us. Makes it harder for him to have the jack. So we're going to go ahead and check to him now. I keep betting my good jacks. Now he bets 5 into 18. Very easy check call with pocket tens. We will check to him again. Board is double paired with that 5. Not the best card, as he could have 5x that now beats us. He bets 12 into 27. How are they in the call bet line? That's a pretty neutral line, but that size is way over bluffed. Paired river and paired turn both over bluffed. We're going to go ahead and call this down, and we end up good against 6-8. The bet sizing and the fact that he's a recreational player is the real data points there for that bluff catch, and that. Because he's a rec, especially a rec playing 56-6, he's going to limp call all kinds of silly, goofy hands. So he has a lot more potential bluffs in his range. In the recs, their tendency is for these smaller sizes, especially the stuff half pot and below, but even really all the non-overbet sizes or all the non-pot type sizes tend to be just, they don't have enough value bets for all the bluffs they end up finding. I assume largely because they have so many goofball bluffs, potential bluffs in their range, that if they start betting even a few of them, they end up betting more than they think they should, or more than they realize that they should. That same rec limps the middle position. We're going to go ahead and isolate from the button using a 27-ish% range, including 9-7 suited. Lower left-hand table had this multi-way pot with the in-position player betting full pot. We're going to go ahead and fold our marginal bluff catcher type hand. Upper right-hand table, we get a Jack 8-4 two-tone flop. We have the gut shot and the flush draw. We're going to go ahead and put in the range bet against him, who quickly folds. Lower left-hand table, we get a couple of limpers, a small blind complete, so we check in with our 3 deuce, and we check range on the 6-3-2 two-tone flop. Looking to check raise, especially the particularly short stack guys. However, it checks through, and the turn is now a 6, counterfeiting our hand. We are still going to go ahead and start jabbing at this, as no one's shown any real interest in it, and we may still have the best hand. We get min raised. Which should be a 6, but won't necessarily be, so we'll go ahead and we'll call that. The odds are just too good. I don't think he really has bluffs in that line, even for that small sizing. The small sizing usually is a very significant data point, but that line, especially being multi-way, I don't buy it. I had a very marginal hand to begin with. I'm just going to go ahead and lay it down. I don't often fold for a half pot bet against a fish, but I just don't really see how he can be having a bluff in that spot. I just don't think he'll find pretty much any of them in that line. Whereas a lot of lines, they have almost so many potential bluffs, and they get there at potential bluffs and turn them into bluffs. So I buy that, but in that spot there, I just don't see him check min raising, then betting half pot with really pretty much any sort of bluff type hand. I think that's 6x or maybe some spade combos. Although I don't even think very many spade combos. I think it's largely 6x, and he's just using a reasonable river size, trying to get a call. Lower right-hand table, we'll raise the ace-10 first in from middle position. Big blind calls us. We get a king 4-3 rainbow flop. He checks to us. We'll go ahead and put in a small range bet. Upper left-hand table will raise the cutoff first in with a 28-ish% raise first in range, including ace-king offsuit, but in the lower left-hand table, not including 6-4 suited. Upper right-hand table, a tight, nitty fish recreational type. It's only raised 5% so far. 4x is the button. We'll just instantly fold our ace-7 offsuit. Against a player that nitty and against a size up like that, there's no reason to get involved with a hand like ace-7. Lower left-hand table will raise first in from middle position with ace-10 suited. Upper left-hand table, the recreational player in the big blind checks to us on the queen 9-5 two-tone, so we'll go ahead and range bet that small. Lower left-hand table, we get led into by the recreational player for about 60% of pot on the Jack 10-9 two-tone board. We have ace-10. We got second pair top kicker, so I'm going to float that at least once, evaluate the turn. Turn interesting card. The Jack pairs the top card, also closes the flush, that Jack of Hearts. He bets 4 into about 11, so we can just go ahead and call once again with our second pair top kicker. River is a 9, double pairing the board. We have the 10 in between the jacks and the 9s, which have paired up. So we have some degree of showdown value here. But we lose to the full houses, obviously, or the flop straights or the turn flushes. He checks to me. I'm just going to go ahead and take my showdown, not try to get some value. He had ace-queen of hearts for the nut flush on the turn. So I think we played it okay. I think he should have looked to get some more value if he was going to be betting that. If he was going to lead out the flop like that, which I don't necessarily think is a terrible play on a board like that, when he completes on the turn, I think he should probably look to get some more money in and not bet so small. The board double pairing the river took away his opportunity value bet, though. Nothing I could have really done about that, or nothing I expect him to do about that there either. Upper right-hand table will raise first in from the middle position with a 21-ish% range, including King 10 offsuit. Lower right-hand table, it limped in, it checked around on the flop. On the turn, it checks to us again, so we're going to start betting small on that Queen Jack 10-6 double flush draw board. We do have the open-ender with the overcard. Upper right-hand table, we get called by a short stack in the small blind. We'll range bet him small on the King 9-6 two-tone flop. The rec check calls us on the upper right-hand table. The turn is a 3 of hearts that closes the flush. I want to continue betting for value and equity denial here, so I'm going to go ahead and bet half pot. Probably check back a lot of rivers. Lower right-hand table is a 3 that's a flush closing river. That heart. We're just going to go ahead and keep betting with our busted straight draw, and we pick up the pot. When we get check raised, even against a min raise, and without having a heart to bail me out, I'm just going to go ahead and fold. That's the downside of barreling some of these, good but vulnerable hands that don't have hearts, that you really can't stand up to a check raise with them. Even a small one, I think, against a fish is just going to be an easy fold. I just don't think he's doing that with a worse king, with some kind of 9x or some kind of single heart flush draw sort of hand. I think I just want to get out of there before that starts to cost me too much money playing guessing games on later streets. Let's see, upper right-hand table, we raised aces under the gun. Lower right-hand table, we raised ace-queen suited from middle position. Upper left-hand table facing a 2.5x open from the button. We can go ahead and defend that with 9-8 offsuit. Lower left-hand table, it limped around the flop and checks to us in the turn. We're just going to start stabbing. We get donked into with the aces on the ace-9-4 two-tone flop by a recreational player that's playing 50 blinds deep. We're just going to go ahead and flat that. We're going to continue bluffing the lower left-hand table. We're going to range bet the lower right-hand table. And we are going to check call with our gut shot with no backdoor flush draw on the upper left-hand table. We get bet into again small on the 9 with that aces hand. Now it's aces full. No need to raise him off of any kind of flush draw or anything like that. If he's got a 9 or a flush draw, he's going to keep coming with us here. He probably doesn't have the ace. He goes ahead and slows down on the river. I'm going to go ahead and put in a sort of reasonable size value bet, let 9x or flushes call. Maybe some merit actually to trying to overbet, because I think a lot of what he has there will be 9x or flushes, and those don't necessarily fold. Maybe some merit into overbetting to try to get that 9 to hero me down. Perhaps I acted too quickly right there. But you definitely want to bet that, of course, and betting smaller is not unreasonable because that board is also still pretty locked down. You can't have any ace-x against us like that. Lower right-hand table, we'll go ahead and continuation bet with our range small on the Queen 7-5 two-tone flop. Upper left-hand table, heads-up situation now. Recreational player limps the button. We check in. We check to him, and he min-bets on the Jack-Jack-8 rainbow flop. We're going to check call the min-bet with king-high backdoor flush draw. If he checks the turn, we're going to be looking to bluff rivers where we don't. We'll probably be betting pretty much every river. The king river, I'll be betting for value. Any other river, I'd be betting to try to move him off something, especially if we just completely bricked out. I guess the 3 might be a hand that's okay to check down and just try to show down my pair of 3s. I'm probably not folding out any sort of pair. Heads up, upper left-hand table, we'll raise the king 10 offsuit first in. Yeah, and that aces hand, I really should have overbet if I would have thought of it a bit longer, given that so much of his range is either going to be trip 9s or flushes, and they're going to be, especially a fish, is not going to be thinking too much about why I'm sizing up. He's just going to know he's got a hand that's too good to fold, even though the bet is big. And I think I get called down by the flushes always, and I get called down by the trip 9s a ton of the time. Not all the time, but enough to justify, the larger bet I'll get when I'm called down by doing that will more than justify the few times he manages to get away because of the bet size up. I think that should have been an overbet or a jam. Lower left-hand table, a new player, presumed to be a recreational player. He limps blind on blind against me. I'm going to go ahead and pop him up With something like my button raise first in range, with King 8 offsuit being right on the bottom or the cusp of that, so we'll pop him up with the King 8. He limp calls. We get a King 3 deuce two-tone flop. He donks into me for about 75%. Nothing to do but just go ahead and call the lead with the King. Turn is the ace of spades, not the best card, and that we no longer have top pair, so I'm going to go ahead and check that one back. He checks again. I am going to try to get some value now, so I'm going to go ahead and put a bet out here with my King. Second pair, if he's got some kind of middling pair and wants to calm me down, it's good. He actually had a slightly better King, King 9, so I value cut myself, but that's okay. I've said it before, and you'll hear me say it again. You're supposed to value cut yourself a lot. I probably also don't even do it enough. You know, if you're not getting value cut a significant portion of the time, that means you're not value betting thin enough. Upper left-hand table, we raise blind on blind with ace-6. We check range on the 9-6-2. He checks back. We get a king of diamonds on the turn, putting the backdoor flush draw out there. We do have the nut flush blocker. We're going to go ahead and start jabbing at that pot small. Lower left-hand table, we'll raise under the gun with ace-king offsuit, using a 17-18% range there. Get called in position. I have a player who's new to the table. We're going to check range to the in-position player on the queen 8-5 rainbow flop. He checks back, turn is a deuce. We're going to go ahead and start jabbing at that pot small from out of position. Upper right-hand table, it's a limp blind on blind plot, so we're going to stab after he checks on that jack 8-9 two-tone flop. I was going to be bluffing with my small spade there on the turn, and my gut shot draw as well. When he leads into me, however, I think I can just go ahead and fold that weak draw. I was going to isolate these limpers out of my blind with ace-10, but the raise from a player who's been pretty nitty and passive beat me to it, so I'm just going to get out of the way with my ace-10. Small blind, lower left-hand table. We're facing a 3x open from this guy in middle position. He's new, but he's been active. He's been calling so much, pretty much every hand. It's the first time he's raising. I'm not going to start making any adjustments based on him one way or the other. I'm just going to treat him like a standard reg thus far. 3-bet him with about an 8% range, including King 10 suited, Ace 10 suited, Queen Jack suited. Beautiful flop for us, that Queen Jack 9 two-tone board. I think that's supposed to be a range check, though. So a board like that hits so much of his calling range. Going to go ahead and check to him. He bets small. I'm going to go ahead and put in a check raise. Might check call if he was betting healthy and large. Given that he's betting small, I'm just going to put in a small check raise. About equivalent to how much is out there in the pot. So I'll kick him up from 6 to about 25. There's about 26 in there. He quickly calls. Turn is the 10 of hearts, which counterfeits my straight and also completes the flush. Very lousy turn card for me. Now he goes ahead and he bets out small. I think I just have to go ahead and get this all in at this point. I mean, he could have a flush, but he shouldn't have too many flushes. He also shouldn't really have too much ace-king. I think I just want to go ahead and get this in, get him pot stuck if he's got something worse, some kind of naked one-heart hand. And he's got ace-king with the heart, so it just didn't work out that well for me. But that's just kind of an unfortunate turn card for him. He really is in a lot of trouble against that flop check raise. I don't know, maybe I'm supposed to get away on the turn once ace-king is possible and then the flush is also possible. I don't know. That's why I play 1-2 and not 5-10 or 10-20. Upper left-hand table, middle position, 3Xs. He's a rec. Small blind, another rec, goes ahead and calls. I can go ahead and defend. I want to be pretty tight against the 3X open, especially with an overcaller, but suited aces are just too good to fold in these spots. Get min bet into, I'm just going to treat that like a fancy check. Go ahead and call most of my range, maybe fold a few hands against that. But I just don't see much merit in raising a marginal ace without any kind of backdoors. I'm going to look to shut the session down here shortly as well. The initial raiser called the min bet as well. Turn is an 8 that closes the flush. Small blind continues betting. We're going to go ahead and call with our aces and 8s to pair. And the under the gun player goes ahead and folds out. The small blind stops betting in the river, which now makes me think there's a pretty decent chance that he does not have the flush, which means I should be value betting my ace-8. So I'm going to go ahead and bet that, thinking he really doesn't play a flush in that line very often, where he goes and starts trapping. River, I'm going to continue bluffing over here multi-way using that small size. The flush closed and completed. I've got the blocker. I've also got good blockers to the straights. They both instantly folded even versus the small size. So there's definitely some merit to that experimenting with the small bluff on the river. I just don't know if it's better than larger sizings, especially in these multi-way spots. Upper left-hand table, get a 2x open from under the gun. We're going to go ahead and pop them up in the cutoff. Probably about a 9.5% range. Something like 9s plus, ace-jack plus, king-queen. Most, if not all, of my suited broadways, a couple of suited wheel aces, something like that. King-queen suited very clearly in that range. Upper left-hand table, erect limps under the gun. We'll isolate from middle position. We'll use something like our under the gun raise first in range, a 17-18% range. King, queen off, very clearly a part of that. Get called by the small blind. It's the first hand he's V-pipped. He's in his second orbit here now. Really shouldn't be calling, especially against an isolation size with pretty much anything in the small blind in these games at these stakes, but he did. So we'll keep an eye on that. Perhaps he's got some kind of weak holdings, or perhaps he's just overvaluing pocket pairs and calling them for more money than he should. Great flop for us, queen, deuce, deuce, two-tone. They both check to me. We'll go ahead and put in our small bet. Not range betting multi-way, but we can certainly bet a hand as strong as king, queen. He check calls us. The small blind does. The rec that limped folds out. We get a 4 of spades that closes the flush. I want to keep betting here to protect against a hand like 9-9 with a single spade. So I'm going to go ahead and use my half pot bet like I like to use on the flush closing turns or the flush possible boards. He quickly check calls again. And then checks to me. I think at this point, I'm not so sure I'm getting a ton of value from mid pairs, especially after I, would be triple barreling in sort of board that started out multi-way. He could have quad twos. He could have, 4s full or 7s full even, or he could have some kind of flush. I think it's much better to just check this back. We're against queen 10, so he's calling with suited broadways at the small blind. He really shouldn't be calling for that size, but he's probably a weaker regular type player as opposed to a true fish, at least based on the hand I saw right there. If you are going to have small blind flats, hands like suited broadways are reasonable hands to have in that range. He just really shouldn't have had it for a 4.5x isolation raise pre-flop. But his minor mistake was to our advantage. We got to get a couple streets of value with our better queen when we made top pair. And I believe that's it. We're shutting down here as the big blinds come around to us right now. So till next time, this is Charlie Murphy signing off. Thank you for watching. I hope you didn't get too discouraged by the blunders. I tried not to let them bother me too much either. We hung in there, still had a decent session overall, though. Until next time, this is Charlie Murphy signing off.